Number 10. Nanny. First on our list today is the partner of the Orphan Maker, Nanny, a low-level telepath that paired up with the Orphan Maker as the two thought that the parents of mutant children were just straight up evil and ill-equipped to properly raise and protect their young mutants from danger. She and Orphan Maker traveled the world searching for young mutants to take care of, killing their parents to sever any family connections, and using her minor telepathic powers to control her new charges. Dubbed the Lost Boys and Lost Girls, these mutant orphans acted as her quote-unquote new children. Her first major mission was at the state home of foundlings in Omaha, a facility where Mr. Sinister kept many mutant children for observation and experimentation, and she was able to liberate them after escaping the grasp of the X-Men. Fast forward a bit and we see Nanny and the Orphan Maker attack the X-Men in Australia in order to quote-unquote save them. However, this led them to being overpowered and forced to flee to see another day. During the events of M-Day, just after decimation, we see Nanny resurface once more only to be defeated by Wolverine himself. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1988's X Factor, number 30. Number 9. TUSK. Not a whole lot is known about the early life of this Inhuman, and honestly not knowing how he turned out to be like this makes him just that little bit more terrifying. TUSK has the ability to grow in power and in size into this monstrous form, as well as the power to produce smaller versions of himself that can act independently thanks to a psychic link. TUSK served Apocalypse as one of the original recruits of the Riders of the Storm, which lasted for quite some time until STRYFE overpowered Apocalypse and the Riders served under him. Fast forward just a tad and we see the Dark Riders return when a lot of the mutant population began dying thanks to the effects of the Terrigen Mist. They went on a bit of a killing spree, getting rid of any mutant healer, believing that their powers were a violation of the natural order, and the reasoning behind that was that mutants had had their chance at survival, and that delaying their extinction was not the way to go about it. This caught the attention of Magneto and his X-Men, and the team set out to take down the Riders, succeeding after Magneto overpowered them and finished them off for good with some good old explosives. Check out Tusk's story starting with 1991's X Factor number 65. Number 8. Bulwark. Oswald Boglin was another X-Men villain that we don't know a whole lot about, especially when it comes to their backstory, but I mean hey, that's not the worst thing, it lets us speculate, and I for one love that. Bulwark had the ability to expand his muscle mass to unknown proportions, increasing his strength, durability, and resistance. He also wore these red leather bands all across his face and body, and it's assumed that this was done as a means of self-restraint to gauge the safe limit of his powers, as they would start to get a little bit tighter the bigger that he got. He was recruited by Emplet to join their team and torment Generation X, and that's honestly exactly what they did. The Hellions were successful in capturing the young mutants, but M had telepathically called for help, and it was answered by X-Men Bishop. M then took out all her frustrations on Bulwark, punching him through the school's biosphere, and then flying right after him. As he was about to attack M back, his muscles started to wither away, and knowing that he was defeated, he fled so that he could fight another day. Like many villains, Bulwark did not get a happy ending, as he was eventually captured by the revamped Weapon X program and was unfortunately killed. Give his story a read starting with 1996's Generation X, number 12. Number 7. Spore. Andrew Graves developed his unique mutation at a pretty young age. Now what was that mutation, you ask? Well, for starters, he had a very animal-like appearance, kinda like Bigfoot, but that's not all, because his real ability was that he was able to control people's moods and actions through pheromones. Growing up with an abusive father who forced his mother to kill herself, Andrew grew up with an intense hatred for humans, and began using his powers to make others turn on each other and kill each other. He eventually adopted the name Spore and became a member of the Acolytes, and as a member of the team, countless civilians and innocent people lost their lives. For a time, he was a prisoner of Excalibur, as Dr. Rory Campbell wanted to cure Spore, but during the treatment, Rory's latent hatred of mutants got the better of him, and Spore manipulated Rory into an aggressive attack on him, which gave him the opportunity to escape. Sadly though, this escape wasn't permanent, as he eventually made his way back onto the island and was killed during a Sentinel attack. It was revealed later that Spore's motives for killing were a lot darker and sadder than we originally thought though. Spore just hated himself as much as other humans, and in his mind felt that killing humans was very wrong and that he therefore deserved to be killed himself. Check him out for yourself, starting with 1993's Uncanny X-Men, number 300. Number 6. Barrage. Another one of the original recruits of the Dark Riders of the Storm on this list today. If you're not familiar with Barrage, he had the ability to transform his forearms into organic weapons capable of collecting ambient energy, and then firing it into powerful explosive blasts. Barrage served as an agent of Apocalypse and seemed to follow him no matter what the task was given, as he was a part of the attack on X-Factor's ship and the attack on the Inhuman city on the moon. Alongside the other members of the Dark Riders, Barrage switched sides and served under STRYFE after he was able to best Apocalypse, and they defended STRYFE's moon base from the X-Men and mortally wounded the unfit Apocalypse in combat. After STRYFE's death, the Riders traveled the world challenging any and all mutants, killing Mesmero and even their own Synapse in the process, as they were too weak to even be considered worthy of living. Barrage was one of the few members of the Riders to survive the massacre by Wolverine because he actually wasn't a part of the team at the time. Honestly, lucky him. Fast forward a bit and the Dark Riders including Barrage embarked on a journey to kill mutant healers after a Terrigen mist cloud was spread throughout the world, endangering mutant kind, believing that the event was to be a test of strength so that only the strongest would survive. When they attacked the healer Shen Zorn, they were caught off guard by his display of ultimate power, which unfortunately cost Barrage his life. Check him out starting with 1991's X Factor number 65. Number 5. Whiteout. Now I'm really starting to sense a pattern here because extremely little is known about Whiteout and her past. A lot of it is just, assuming and speculation. We do know what her power is though. Whiteout possesses the superhuman ability to project a flash of blinding white light from her body. This light renders her opponents blind for approximately 1 minute, and for some unknown reason her power only affects victims that she chooses, and not everyone within the range, meaning it can be used very tactically. So like I said before, a lot of her past life is speculated, but it's assumed that she has resided in the Savage Land for some time, and it was there that she was recruited by the mutant Zaladane to join her forces of the Savage Land mutants. In her only known mission for Zaladane, Whiteout and the other Savage Land mutants attacked the X-Men in Chile while they were looking for Polaris. The X-Men defeated the Savage Land mutates pretty easily in this battle, and Whiteout presumably just fled. Check out more of her for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1989's Uncanny X-Men number 249. Number 4. Fever Pitch. Real name unknown, Fever Pitch was a very handsome young man until his mutant powers manifested and he accidentally destroyed his own face. Thanks to his mutant powers, his entire body is made of an organic flame that allows him to radiate intense heat, fly, and discharge and throw explosive plasma. As the years went by and his powers became stronger, he eventually burned through his entire body, leaving him nothing more but a fiery skeleton, which ultimately led him to becoming a member of the incarnation of Gene Nation, organized and led by the Dark Beast. Fever Pitch was seemingly killed on his first mission by Nate Gray after his energy was siphoned off, but he did later resurface in Berlin trying to capture Abyss so that he could sell him off to some researchers. Now skip ahead a little bit and we see Fever Pitch classified by the government as a national security threat, as he was one of the few mutants to keep his powers after the decimation of the mutant population. He was one of the many mutants to have a tracking chip implanted in his head before a trip into Salem Center. When the chip's true nature was discovered, he had it removed by Mr. M, who he followed when he led an exodus from the Institute. Fever Pitch was later captured by the anti-mutant group the Sapien League and was injected with a dose of the legacy virus, causing his powers to straight up overload, killing hundreds including himself. Check out his whole story starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1999's Generation X, number 50. Number 3. The Nasty Boys. Comprised of Mr. Sinister, Ruckus, Multiple Man, Slab, Gorgeous George, Hairbag, and Ramrod, the Nasty Boys were the strike force organized by Mr. Sinister to take down the X-Men. The Nasty Boys made their first appearance all together battling the X Factor after Slab initially attacked Strong Guy. After losing this battle, Sinister posed as Steven Shafran and unveiled his plan to kill the Scarlet Witch. Shafran, obviously upset, attempted to kill him only to be killed himself. During all that, Ramrod was also deported from the country but did make his way back, illegally. Needless to say, this is a very busy group. The team was later regrouped by Sinister and they hunted Malice, who was trying to kill Polaris, so that they couldn't remerge, and they didn't stop this hunt until Malice was apparently destroyed by Polaris herself and Havoc. A while later, the team decided to reform during the final days of mutant kind after X-Man's return that ended in the death of most of the X-Men. Now it was revealed to be a bait set up by the upstarts to lure out the remaining X-Men, which they were not aware of, and they were all promptly killed by the upstarts. Check out these nasty, nasty boys for yourself, starting with 1992's X Factor, number 75. Number 2. Forearm. Michael McCain, aka Forearm, was one of the founding members of the Mutant Liberation Front, a team of disillusioned and rebellious mutant youth. Now Michael is called Forearm for pretty obvious reasons, but I will explain his powers a bit for you anyways. He has 4 arms, hence, the name. And thanks to this mutation, he also possesses superhuman strength, stamina, and durability. Now one of their first missions under the leadership of STRYFE was to liberate the incarcerated New Mutants members Rusty and Skids, and the team broke them out of prison and the pair joined the MLF out of just straight up confusion. Skip ahead a bit and the MLF travels to Muir Island where they meant to steal the legacy virus data, but while they were there, they learned about the Xavier protocols and decided to steal them instead. The team was confronted by Excalibur though, and they were quickly teleported away empty-handed. After a second attempt to steal the legacy virus, Forearm left the team as he felt betrayed by Moonstar, who revealed herself to be an undercover SHIELD agent. He later resurfaced as a part of a fighting championship in Madripoor called Bloodsport, where superpowered opponents fought to the death. However, in an unfortunate turn of events, Forearm was killed during a fight with former Serpent Society member Anaconda, who just broke his neck. Oddly enough though, he was somehow able to recover from death and made an appearance as a member of the MLF once more not too long after. Give a story a read starting with 1990's New Mutants number 86. And number 1, Executioner. Now with a name like Executioner, you can probably guess what this guy is all about. Carl Denti was a field agent for the FBI whose partner Fred Duncan was a member of Charles Xavier's underground, who would cache the technological equipment that the X-Men confiscated from alien races. After his partner's death, Carl inherited all of the equipment and decided that mutants had caused way too much damage in the world, so he donned a lot of the equipment and started calling himself the Executioner, beginning his quest to punish mutants who had not been legally convicted of their crimes. Starting off with killing the mutant tower, Denti quickly teleported away once the X-Men arrived on the scene to stop him, but he was smart and decided to teleport to the X-Mansion to kill the comatose Emma Frost. However, he wasn't smart enough because he was still stopped by Cyclops and Cable. Now none of that deterred him though, because he still continues his mission of punishing mutants. However, for a while he actually did some good as he teamed up with the Punisher in Washington DC to protect the pro-mutant activist Reverend James Conover from the Mutant Liberation Front. This act landed him the position of potential recruit for the initiative. However, who knows if he was ever actually on that team, because that was one of the last times we saw him. Check out his story for yourself, starting with 1993's Uncanny X-Men Annual, number 1993.
Moving on to number 10 with MARROW. Of all the mutant powers out there, I think the one I would actively try to avoid having, if that was how it works, is the abilities of MARROW. Now MARROW's actual mutant ability is a hyper-accelerated metabolism, and it's through this that she's able to do what most people know her for: accelerated bone growth. She has the ability to control the growth, shape, and toughness of her bone structure, even having it protrude from her body and be used as weapons that she can remove. She can also use this ability to create a sort of armor. Now the only problem, and the reason I wouldn't want it, is that it hurts when she does it, and just imagine how much that would hurt, having your bones protrude from your body. No thank you, I'll pass. Luckily, she has a very rapid healing factor that also gives her enhanced strength, agility, and reflexes, and as a little bonus, this girl has 2 hearts, which allowed her to actually survive when she had one pulled out. Nice. Number 9, PYRO. St. John Allardyce is an Australian pyrokinetic mutant. He has the ability to control flame to grow in size and intensity, and to even take on any form he desires. He has used flame to create almost solid creations he refers to as, quote, the living flame, which have been in the shape of gigantic claws, birds, or even golems. The size, power, and intensity of the fire beings PYRO created were limited only by the extent of his imagination, the degree of his concentration, and his force of will. The only problem for PYRO is that he cannot generate flames spontaneously. He needs a source, which has been flamethrowers in his costume, other allies like Lockheed, or like a lighter or something. He could also be burnt by any fire that wasn't under his direct control. Now, he used his abilities mainly for evil deeds and crimes, but since his resurrection on Krakoa after he died due to the legacy virus, he has gone on to join Kate Pryde's Marauders and got this crazy skull tattoo on his face. It's kind of cool, but also I wouldn't do it, but you know, whatever. And at number 8 is Eunice the Untouchable. Now, I gotta say the force field abilities of wrestler, criminal, and villain Eunice the Untouchable definitely have some major drawbacks. The positives are great. His force field can withstand blows from the Incredible Hulk. He can project his force field to move objects. He could also use the shield to be untouchable, hence the name, opening it up to be able to grab things and eat. Now, the drawback would come in the fact that there have been multiple times where Eunice had his abilities increased, but to a point he couldn't even control his own abilities. At this time, his shield would literally close him off from everything. He couldn't grab things, eat food, or even breathe oxygen, which caused him to even pass out on one occasion, which luckily deactivated his powers, allowing him to actually live. Maybe if he used his powers for good, the writers would make him less self-destructive, but these are the cards you're dealt, bro. Guys, if you are indeed enjoying this video, do make sure to give it a little thumbs up. It's all you gotta do to let us know that you're enjoying what you're seeing. Thanks, nerds. Appreciate you. Number 7, STRYFE. You know, a lot of the characters on these lists have come into contact with the character of STRYFE. And while most people do know how powerful STRYFE is, I think not including him on this far into this series is kind of a sin. So, STRYFE is actually a clone, created by Mother Ascani and taken by Apocalypse, a clone of Nathan Summers, whom most of you know as Cable. STRYFE is essentially what Cable could have been had he not been infected by the techno-organic virus that he needs to use his powers to constantly keep at bay. Without that limitation, just like Cable, STRYFE is an Omega-level telekinetic, at least that's what he calls himself, and it's stated that he is the 3rd most powerful one on Earth. He is able to do almost all of the the other things telepaths of his level are capable of, plus powerful defensive and offensive telekinetic powers. But he is also cybernetically enhanced to have superhuman physical attributes thanks to Apocalypse. STRYFE is an incredibly powerful villain not to be taken lightly at all. And at number 6 is Reaper. Pantu Hurageb has some interesting abilities to say the least. When he first appeared as part of STRYFE's Mutant Liberation Front, Reaper had the ability to generate a paralyzing effect on others that slowed their mobility and reaction times. He would usually use his scythe as a conduit for this ability, and it could even fully paralyze victims. But later, Reaper was enhanced by the Weapon X program, who gave him cybernetic prosthetic arms that could take different shapes, although you likely won't be surprised to hear they usually took the form of scythes that would still act as a conduit for his abilities. Unfortunately, Reaper did lose his abilities on M-Day, only to regain them again and then have them drained again. So he doesn't have any powers right now, I'm pretty sure. Or they're like diluted or something, I don't know. Number 5, Dragoness. For Tamara Kurtz, she was born a mutant directly because of the nuclear fallout caused by Hiroshima that her parents were exposed to, which is a different reason than a lot of other mutants, which to me makes her more interesting. She only debuted in 1990, so she's only been around for about 30 years, but she has certainly established herself as a powerful mutant so far, displaying the ability of bioelectricity generation, kind of like an eel. No, I'm just kidding. She's not like an eel. She usually uses this electricity in electrical blasts and pyrotechnic flares, which she used as part of STRYFE's Mutant Liberation Front. Since her introduction, she has also been seen as a vampire, after which she died and has since been revived, so she may or may not still be a vampire as well. I have no idea. Also, for a while she was equipped with these biotechnic pair of wings, which in the House of M were actually completely organic. I'd be stoked to see her show up again in comics and maybe expanded upon. I don't feel like there are many electricity-based mutants, so it'd be kinda cool. Number 4, SLAB. A lot of you liked seeing Thumbelina in part 7 of this list, but what about her brother? Chris Anderson was a member of Mr. Sinister's Nasty Boys, and his life before this time isn't very well known. He has abilities similar to his sister. Where she can decrease in size, SLAB has been shown to increase in size, getting stronger and more durable as he does so. Later on, he joined the Mutant Liberation Front, and even more recently than that, he has been seen on the Mutant Nation of Krakoa, where he went on to join up with SWORD as part of their security division. Number 3, Vincente. He isn't really the most impressive of characters, although his abilities are certainly interesting, even if he usually gets defeated. On Earth 616, Vincente was a member of M-Plate's Hellions team. He had the ability to change his body from solid, liquid, or gas forms. Now as a gas or liquid, he has been shown to be able to mix himself in with other materials and substances. So, for example, he once mixed himself in with some soup. Or, in the Age of Apocalypse world, he became wine inside a bottle. Over time, he further developed his abilities so that in his gas form, he could now render himself poisonous if inhaled. He was defeated twice, and since the last defeat, he hasn't really appeared more. Not yet at least, so let's cross our fingers and hope he shows up. Number 2, Skids. Sally Blevins, otherwise known as Skids, has a long history in Marvel Comics, being involved with many other mutant characters and teams from Magneto and Charles Xavier to the Morlocks and Exterminators. First introduced in X-Factor number 7 in August 1986, Skid's mutant ability is to create frictionless force fields that protect her from pretty much all physical attacks, falls, energy weapons, and projections. It can also allow her to kind of skate at a bit of speed given the frictionless nature of these force fields. She can also use her force fields to extend to others if she focuses. There was one really cool moment when she protected Avalon from breaking up upon re-entry to the Earth's atmosphere with help from Jean Grey. That was really cool. So if you ever check that out, check it out. That made no sense. Whatever. Let's move on. Number 1, Wind Dancer. Sophia Mantiga was increasingly isolated at a young age, being ignored by her father, Walter Barrett, after the death of her mother and being told to not use her powers. Now Sophia finally reached a breaking point. She entered into one of her father's grocery stores and let loose a hurricane inside of it. After she was arrested by police, Mr. Barrett was confronted by Danielle Moonstar, who saw Sophia on the news. She, persuaded him to enroll Sophia into the Xavier Institute. Sophia Mantiga has aerokinesis that she uses to amplify small vibrations in the air and draw far-off sounds to her ears. She can also disrupt the equilibrium of others with compressed air, lift herself off the ground for flight, create sharp forces of wind that can cut through material, and she even creates isolated whirlwinds or direct blasts of high-pressure air control. And she can manipulate the movement of air, but this is all before she was depowered. She has been a part of of the Marauders, X Corporation, New Warriors, and New Mutants Squad. Coming in right at number 10 is Richter. Julio Richter has a pretty interesting mutant power. Richter can manipulate various aspects of the planet itself. Originally, his powers manifested in simple seismic energy, allowing him to create earthquakes, shockwaves, and rudimentary transport of Earth matter. However, after Richter's powers evolved, he now has the ability to remotely terraform the ground around him in a much more precise manner. He can toss rocks around with precision or will the ground to open up like a tunnel. But he also has some skill with plants, controlling vines and other plants to ensnare his opponents. Julio also gained magma kinesis after being trapped under an active volcano and just rising out of it, riding on top of the magma like an absolute badass. More impressive than that though is that Richter's powers have created a psychic / empathic bond between himself and the primal life force of Earth's biosphere, allowing him some clairvoyance and mysticism. Definitely one of the coolest characters I have never heard of. I just wanted to pause here to say if you're enjoying this list so far, dropping a like is all you have to do to help us out and let us know that this is what you want to see. And on that note, we're gonna get to number 9, who is Gorgeous George. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and when I behold George Blair, gorgeous is not the word that comes to mind, but nonetheless that is the name he holds. Gorgeous George's body is composed of this tar or putty-like stuff that through his thoughts can be expanded, morphed, and reshaped in any way he wants. Using this ability, he has been able to turn his entire body into a puddle or make himself extremely slippery to avoid capture. Side note, becoming extra slippery just makes me like ick, you know? I don't like that slipperiness. George is also very hard to injure. He can reconstitute parts of his body and can even bend to dodge attacks. The slippery thing also kind of helps with this as well. He has also once tried to choke Strong Guy by using his powers to enter his lungs, which is just a terrifying thought. On a lighter note though, his arms are actually longer than normal because he forgot their normal length after getting drunk with other members of Mr. Sinister's Nasty Boys. Well, that's kind of cool. Number 8 is Strong Guy. I kind of can't believe I haven't talked about Guido Carosella yet. Despite this guy's massive hulking appearance, he is one of the most entertaining mutants around. Essentially, Guido, who goes by the name Strong Guy, has the ability to absorb kinetic energy and use it to enhance his physical strength. Now at a base level, he can lift around 50 tons, which is already more than a lot of superpowered beings. But using his kinetic absorption, he can boost that strength up to far above 100 tons, making him one of the strongest characters in Marvel Comics. Unfortunately, Guido's body suffers from his mutation. Storing the kinetic energy he absorbs for more than 90 seconds will permanently distort his body in very painful ways. The distortions he's already suffering from cause him to be in constant pain, which, being the great guy he is, pushed him towards being absolutely hilarious to hide his pain. Hey y'all, if you love the manga, if you love the anime, well then make sure to check out Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. James is an awesome host bringing you videos just like this one, but with that manga and anime setting. You should definitely check it out. Number 7, Thumbelina. Are you getting tired of seeing all these super-powered beings who look like they just walked off a runway? Well, lucky for you, there is Christina Anderson, who goes by the moniker of Thumbelina. She's short, she's stout, she's slow, and she's always being made fun of. But she has a pretty useful mutant ability. Thumbelina can shrink down to 1/4 of an inch, making her an excellent candidate for missions of espionage with the Mutant Liberation Front. The best part about Thumbelina's powers though is that she retains her full-size strength in her miniature size and has even been shown to actually increase in strength as she shrinks. So make fun of her all you want, but Thumbelina has proved instrumental to the Mutant Liberation Front team, even being the reason their first mission was such a success. And coming off of that, number 6 is Layla Miller. Of all the mutant powers I've come across, Resurrection is one that doesn't actually happen too often. But Layla's Resurrection ability is an interesting one. It comes with a major side note. Layla has the ability to resurrect dead beings, restoring their bodies and their consciousness, but
not their soul. Without their soul, the resurrected being will have no conscience or morality. We saw this happen both with Strong Guy and Trevor Fitzroy, who were resurrected by Layla, who eventually experienced drastic changes in their personality without their souls. Another key factor about this resurrection is that it can only be performed within minutes of the individual's death. Layla claims she can also reverse this process, taking back the life that she gives. Another interesting note for Layla is that during the House of M, Layla was resistant to Wanda's reality warping abilities and retained all of her memories. She could even give others back their memories. She's also been to the future and studied magic with Dr. Doom, so like, that's cool as well. Coming in at number 5 is M. Just the letter M. Monet St. Croix has an interesting past, and honestly, her family is a big part of that. Her brother is an incredibly powerful bad dude who trapped her in a different form where she is known as Penance. As Penance, she has diamond skin, a telepathic resistance, and super sharp claws. M can even combine with her younger siblings Claudette and Nicole, but on her own, Monet is essentially a near perfect being. All of her physical and mental skills are greater than the natural physical limits of peak humans, granting her super strength, speed, agility, stamina, senses, intuition, and a genius level intellect, as well as reflexes that even allow her to catch bullets. She can fly at supersonic speeds by sheer force of will, she can read minds, project her thoughts into the minds of others, and defensively mask her mind against telepathic intrusion, and she has even displayed some telekinesis. And on top of all that, she has the power of being ridiculously good looking. Lucky. Number 4, Marius St. Croix. I could talk about Monet St. Croix for a long time, but her brother, he is just terrifying and needs to be discussed. Marius, who eventually goes by the name M-Plate, has the ability to siphon mutant energy by feeding on the bone marrow of mutants using his super creepy feeder mouths that appear on the palms of his hands. M-Plate needs the energy from mutants in order to survive, almost like a mutant vampire. And like a vampire, if Marius siphons all of a person's energy, his victims will pass away. Also like a vampire, if M-Plate drains only part of a victim's energy, he can gain a kind of psychic control over their mind, and can cause the mutant to become an energy vampire just like him, but under his control. Kind of like a vampire's familiar. Interestingly, when feeding from a victim, he actually cancels out their powers and copies them for himself. After multiple feedings, he even gains their power permanently, like he did with Penance's diamond skin. And at number 3 is Chamber. Chamber, or Jonathan Evans Starsmore, discovered his powers when a blast of psionic energy burst from his torso, destroying much of his chest and his face. It turns out that Chamber is actually literally composed of that same psionic energy, and his body just acts as a shell for it. When his powers burst out of him, the wound was replaced by a constant glow of psionic fire, leaving him unable to speak. Instead, he can only communicate telepathically. Additionally, he does not eat, drink, or even breathe, as he has no organs. Chamber constantly created and unleashed psionic charges of energy that could strike with a volatile force, being projected as a blast from his chest, a series of guided streams that struck specific targets, or as a massive eruption striking in all directions. Now, if he was given the time to train properly, Chamber could have potentially been one of the most powerful mutants to walk the earth, but unfortunately he's not. Number 2, Mikhail Rasputin. As the older brother of both Colossus and Magic, Mikhail Rasputin has quite the mutant genealogy, and he ain't no chump himself. Mikhail is an alpha level mutant with the ability to manipulate subatomic matter and warp energy. His power hasn't really been properly defined, but he could forcibly fuse a man to a tree and could manipulate Bobby Drake, Iceman's body. Speaking of Iceman, Mikhail also seemed to display some form of enhanced perception, being able to see Bobby's potential just by looking at him, and he could show him how to use his powers in better ways. Mikhail has also used his power to fire energy blasts, tamper with people's powers, and most prominently for teleportation. He could transport himself as well as others by opening up dimensional portals by ripping away at the subatomic wall of space, which he did when the Soviets sent him into space and blew up his ship. Sorry. And coming in at number 1 is Sienna Blaze. Sienna Blaze has incredibly strong destructive abilities, thanks to the fact that Sienna can disrupt a planet's electromagnetic energy spectrum, absorbing the energy into her body and then releasing it, usually indestructive blasts. Sienna's released energy would tear a hole in the local electromagnetic field, which is bad, in case you wondered, with repeated use of her power theoretically being able to destroy the planet. She can also use the magnetic energy to fly at 150 miles per hour, or impressively, to teleport herself along the planet's electromagnetic field. Again, every time she teleports, she permanently damages the electromagnetic field at the point of departure, causing a pretty strong explosion. As an example, Sienna shot down the X-Men's Blackbird in Antarctica. Sienna then ambushed Cyclops and Storm and nearly completely took them out until Professor X prevented her from using her powers. Then Storm, Cyclops, and Professor X managed to defeat Sienna, except she just teleported away and left a massive explosion in her stead.
Coming in at number 10, we have rays. I love when we start getting alternate universe stuff because that's when things really get crazy. You can mix and match and get all sorts of super combinations that you want. And in this case, we have Wolverine and Mystique getting busy and making a baby that has both their powers. Rays is the combination of two heroes to make one of the best spies of all time. Because the thing about Mystique is you can break into almost anywhere because of your ability to shapeshift, but you're at high risk of getting killed because you don't have any sort of protection outside of your hand-to-hand combat and skills with weapons. But then you mix in Wolverine's healing factor and some razor sharp claws, and you have a soldier who can sneak into any place and take out the competition like no one else on the squad. While Rays might not be the most powerful mutant of all time, you can't deny the utility and subtlety that someone like Rays could bring to the table. I don't know if Rays is a fitting enough name for someone who can sneak around and kill someone with claws. They should be called Badger, or Sneaky Badger, or Mongoose.
Number 9, Chimera. Chimera is the daughter of Storm from the alternate Earth of 13729. The same reality that Rays hails from, actually, weirdly enough. The identity of Chimera's father has never been confirmed, but many believe that she's the daughter of Storm's frequent love interest, Black Panther, which would be pretty cool, and I think is what we all want to happen here. We don't normally get to see what these two's future children would look or be like, so yeah. Chimera is a mutant like her mother and first appeared in Wolverine in the X-Men issue 36. She was created by Jason Aaron and Ed McGuinness, and she possesses telepathic powers which allow her to communicate with and influence animals. She's also an expert tracker, which implies to me that she's either the daughter of Black Panther or possibly also of Wolverine. A reality where Wolverine is kids with both Mystique and Storm though seems really intense, so I'll just leave that in your mind.
And before we get into our next point, just give this video a big thumbs up because that really helps us out, guys. Coming in at number 8, we have Megan Frost. I don't know what it is with Scott Summers, but it seems that he has a thing for telepaths, or they have a thing for him. I'm not sure which way the pendulum swings, but either way, he has a few kids via telepaths. This time, it would be him and Emma Frost who would hook up and make Megan Frost. Megan comes to the table with a host of powers from her parents. She's got her dad's psionic blast, and she's got her mama's telepathy. She also has a host of telekinetic powers, so it would seem that Scott Summers might have some hidden telekinetic powers in his genes because his other kids do as well. Now on the downside, Megan didn't get her mom's diamond skin, which is one of her most legendary powers, but she makes up for this by training hard in hand-to-hand combat to the level where she could knock out anyone who might be able to sneak by her telepathy and get within punching range.
Number 7, Rogue. Rogue is the daughter of Mystique and Destiny. Well, adopted daughter anyways, but they were both definitely more influential in the raising of Rogue than our own biological parents, so I consider them more of her parents than her actual parents, I guess? They are her actual parents. That's it. Before she ran away as a teenager, Rogue was raised in a hippie commune by her father and aunt after her mother disappeared. After she'd left, she ended up being approached by Mystique, who was told to seek her out by her long-term partner, Destiny. Rogue joined the two of them and they raised her like their own daughter. While Rogue is super awesome and powerful, Mystique is rarely associated with the X-Men, which is why Rogue ranks so low on this list. Basically, she's paying for her mother's generally more villainous tendencies, which has also factored into her story in the comics many times before. Poor Rogue, and also honestly, poor Mystique.
Coming in at number 6, we have X-23, the most famous child of Wolverine, and certainly one of the most deadly. X-23 X-23, also known as Laura Kinney, is the clone of Wolverine but also kind of his daughter. It's a little bit of a weird backstory. She's a clone, but she wasn't grown in a tube like most clones are, or I think they are. I don't know a lot about science. But she was actually grown in someone's womb, so that pretty much makes her a baby like any other baby, but she was for sure a clone. Are you confused? It's comic books, that's just how things are sometimes. But she's got all of her daddy's powers, and she can cut you down faster than a Vitamix blender. She can show that she can be a prolific Wolverine replacement, since after Logan dies, she steps into the role as the new Wolverine and starts taking dudes out just like her old pa. And something very interesting about this character is that the first time she showed up, it wasn't actually in comics, but it was in the TV show called X-Men Evolution, which was about a bunch of teenage versions of the X-Men all going to school together and having school problems, you know, and school stuff.
Number 5, Shogo. Shogo Lee is the son of Jubilee, and while he might just be a baby currently, he's still been a powerhouse recently in the comics. Shogo was adopted by Jubilee after he was orphaned by a meteor strike. Sounds random, but it actually tied into stuff. Anyways, for Jubilee, adopting Shogo was very important and a big part of her growing up as a character. As far as we know, Shogo is not immune like his mom, but he did have some pretty cool powers while in Otherworld. His imagination combined with fairy magic granted him the ability to turn into a dragon while in Otherworld. A mother freaking dragon. A dragon. So yeah, he is basically a dragon whenever he's there in Otherworld, which makes him pretty powerful while on those planes. Saturnine herself also took a shining to him, and he was instrumental during the fight at the end of the Ten of Swords event.
Coming in number 4, we have Cable. I mean, how do we make a list of children of X-Men and even think about leaving out Cable? Cable is the son of Scott Summers, better known as Cyclops, and the very powerful telepath Madeline Pryor, who's the evil clone of Jean Grey. See, Scott thought he was gonna have a baby with Jean, but it was a trick! There's so many tricky babies in comic books. Well, they had a baby, and that baby became insanely powerful, one of the most powerful telepaths, and then he becomes a skilled soldier, and then he goes back in time to work with his dad and sometimes against his dad. It's a very complicated situation. He also gets some sort of technovirus put into him, and it makes it harder for him to use his powers because he has to constantly use his mind to fight off the technovirus. And he gets cloned, and his clone is evil and has no virus. And he's buddies with Deadpool. The two of them work together in a straight man stooge double act kind of thing.
Number 3, Polaris. While some might think of Magneto as more of a villain and therefore not one of the X-Men, he has been a member on and off throughout his history and has even led teams both within and without the main continuity. His daughter Lorna Dane and himself have one of the most strained relationships of all of the X-Men and their kids. This has been highlighted recently and ultimately comes down to the fact that initially Magneto manipulated Lorna, keeping the truth of him being her father from her. Not a great start. Even when that fact was revealed to her, he still hadn't been the best dad, and Polaris has even called him out on this before in the comics, reminding him that he doesn't even really know her. Eesh. Still, the two teaming up together are able to perform some pretty powerful feats as both share the power of magnetism.
Coming in number 2, we have Legion. If you're Professor X's kid, you know you're going to be extremely powerful, and you would think you would be raised by the perfect dad and have one of the best fathers around. Well, even though Xavier is good at raising kids that he has no blood connection to, he isn't that good at making a strong connection with his own son. Part of it is just bad parenting, and the other part is Legion is a lot to deal with even for the most powerful, responsible, and well-adjusted parents on the planet. See, Legion isn't just one mutant. He has split personalities that live in his body, and each one of them has their own mutation. So Legion can switch from personality to personality and change his power. That's a pretty serious combination of abilities that probably work really well together. Well, here's the thing. You don't need his powers to work together because several of these mutants are Omega level. And when I say several, I mean around 200. And even the ones that aren't strong enough to wipe out existence itself, which Legion has done more than once, they are still strong enough to create an amazing storm of chaos. And there are new powers and personalities being created all the time inside Legion's body. Rogue was inside Legion's mind once, and she said there were over 1,000 personalities with new ones being born.
Number 1, Daken. Daken is definitely one of the most iconic X-Men kids, I believe. Although, obviously X-23 is also up there. I'm sorry that I just dissed her by putting Daken above her. And he's a really well-known X-Men kid, despite the fact that he has major daddy issues. Dakin is now all grown up and is currently part of the X Factor team, but he has been all over the place when it comes to his alignment since he was first introduced in the comics in Wolverine Origins issue number 10. We've seen him as both a villain working against his father, even trying to kill him. We've seen him take on the Punisher alongside the Dark Avengers, acting as Osborn's assassin. We've seen him tangle even with the likes of Deadpool and be manipulated by the lovable and very unstable Mirth, but he's also acted heroically from time to time, and now seems to be more on the side of those things with X Factor. Though then again, Krakoa is a place for all mutants, so it's not like him being a bad boy would ever mean that he'd get kicked off the team. And when it comes to mutant bad boys, Dakin is definitely one of the baddest. I need to do a mutant bad boy list so I can put him at the top.